We often go through life under the illusion that the most important things can be learned in a classroom, read in a book, or passed down through a lecture. And while knowledge is powerful, there is something far more important than knowing, it's living, because the most valuable skills in life aren't taught. They're lived, they're absorbed, they're earned through experience, not instruction. Think about the moments that shaped who you are. They probably weren't inside a training seminar or during a lecture. They were the hard conversations you didn't want to have. They were the times you failed miserably and had to get back up when no one was watching. They were the quiet mornings of self-reflection or the exhausting nights when you wanted to quit but chose not to. That's where life teaches us. Not through theory, but through experience. In organizations, schools, and even families, we tend to focus heavily on transferring information. We emphasize the what and how, but we often forget the why. The why behind a skill is what gives it life. Why do we need to communicate clearly? Why does emotional intelligence matter? Why should we learn to listen more than we speak? The answers aren't found in a syllabus. They're found in the way we lead ourselves and serve others. It's easy to mistake knowledge for skill, but there's a huge difference between knowing what to do and being able to do it consistently when it matters most. Reading about courage isn't the same as standing up for someone when it's inconvenient. Learning about empathy isn't the same as sitting with a friend in pain without judgment, without needing to fix them. Talking about integrity isn't the same as making the right decision when it costs you something. That's what I mean when I say the most important skills aren't taught. They're lived. And the truth is, life is always offering us opportunities to practice. Every single day. Every difficult conversation is a chance to practice active listening. Every moment of frustration is an invitation to develop patience. Every unexpected change is an opportunity to adapt. But most people miss these chances. Not because they don't care, but because they're waiting for a perfect moment, a structured environment, a workbook, a certification. But life doesn't give us those. It just gives us choices, moment by moment. And the more intentional we become, the more skilled we become naturally. I've met leaders with no formal training who could move people with just a few words. Not because they were gifted speakers, but because they were fully present. I've worked with teams where the person with the least experience had the most impact, not because they had the best resume, but because they carried themselves with humility, clarity, and purpose. These are not talents. These are lived skills. And the people who embody them didn't learn them in theory. They learned them by showing up to life fully. The beauty of lived skills is that they grow with us. They evolve as we evolve. Take communication, for example. It's not just about speaking clearly or using the right words. At its core, communication is about understanding others and being understood. And that requires more than technique. It requires awareness, empathy, patience. Those are things you develop by being in the room, listening with your full attention, picking up on the things people don't say, asking better questions, and caring deeply about the answers. Think about confidence. We often teach it as a trait, a posture, maybe even a mindset. But real confidence is a result of competence, doing the hard work, failing forward, building credibility with yourself over time. Confidence that's lived doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. It simply shows up and does the work with or without recognition, or take discipline. That's not a matter of simply making a schedule and sticking to it. It's about choosing what matters most again and again, especially when your feelings tell you otherwise. It's the skill of remembering your long-term values in the face of short-term emotions. And again, you don't learn that in a training course. You learn that when your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and the bed feels warm. You learn that when you're tired, discouraged, and tempted to procrastinate. You learn that by living it. The same goes for emotional intelligence, adaptability, resilience, all critical life skills. They aren't boxes you check, they are muscles you build. And muscles grow with use, with pressure, with resistance. You can't become emotionally intelligent by reading about emotions. You become emotionally intelligent by paying attention to how you react, how others feel around you, and how your words land. You build adaptability by getting uncomfortable, not once, but consistently. You develop resilience by walking through the fire, not around it. What makes all this powerful is that it places responsibility back in your hands. If the most important skills are lived, then your life becomes the curriculum. Every interaction is the lesson, and you don't need permission to start. You don't need to be certified to be kind. You don't need a title to take ownership. You don't need to wait to be better. You just need to show up and live the skill again and again. Now, this doesn't mean formal education isn't valuable. Of course it is. But it should serve as a foundation, not a final product. The world doesn't reward people who know the most. It rewards those who make the most difference. And difference is made by people who can live what they say they believe. So if you want to grow, not just in career, but in life, don't ask, what should I learn? Ask instead, what should I live? Don't chase credentials, chase character. Don't look for hacks, look for habits. Don't focus on looking capable. Focus on being capable. And if you do, something amazing happens. People begin to trust you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because you're consistent, because you live what you say. And in a world full of noise, that's a rare and powerful skill, one that no one can fake and no book can teach. So when someone asks what the most important life skills are, remember they're not taught, they're lived, and that means anyone, anywhere, at any time, can begin to build them, starting now, starting with you. We often talk about success as if it's a finish line, something we race toward, something we chase with goals, ambition, and effort. And while ambition is powerful and hard work is essential, there's something far more important than reaching a milestone. It's the ability to stay there, to sustain it, to grow beyond it. That's where the illusion begins to unravel. Because success without the right skills to hold it is fleeting. It looks impressive for a moment. It may even get applause, but over time it collapses under its own weight. You see, there are two kinds of success. The first kind is what most people chase, the appearance of success, titles, numbers, awards, money, the stuff that's easy to measure, the stuff that fits neatly into a bio or looks good on a social media post. But the second kind of success, the lasting kind, isn't always visible. It's rooted in the person you become. It's built on skills like integrity, consistency, communication, adaptability, and resilience. These aren't always flashy. They don't come with a certificate. But they are the reason some people can build and rebuild, while others burn out the moment they reach the top. Knowing what to do doesn't guarantee you'll do it well under pressure. Having the tools doesn't mean you have the wisdom to use them. And being given a position doesn't mean you're ready to lead. That's the illusion. The belief that if we just get the job, the recognition, the outcome, the rest will figure itself out. But the truth is, the higher you go, the more your foundation matters. And that foundation is made up entirely of lived skills. Imagine a person who rises quickly in their career. They're smart, they're driven, they know how to impress. But they haven't learned how to listen. They don't know how to handle criticism without becoming defensive. They avoid difficult conversations. They crack under pressure. What happens next is inevitable. People stop trusting them. Culture erodes. Teams fall apart, and eventually their title becomes meaningless. Not because they weren't talented, but because they lack the skills to carry their own success. Now, contrast that with someone else. Maybe they don't rise as fast, maybe they don't have the flashiest resume, but they've developed something deeper. They listen before they speak. They stay calm when things go wrong. They admit when they're wrong and take full responsibility. They build others up, not just themselves. And because of that, they create trust. And trust more than talent is what makes people want to follow you. That person's success lasts because it's not built on image. It's built on substance. This is why skills matter more than ever. Not technical skills alone, but human skills. The kind of skills that can't be automated, outsourced, or skipped. The kind that allow you to adapt, connect, and grow with others. Think about communication. It's not just about talking. It's about connecting. It's the ability to translate your thoughts clearly, to understand where others are coming from, and to build bridges even when you disagree. That skill alone changes everything from how you lead a team to how you navigate conflict to how you build trust in a room. Or take emotional intelligence. You could have all the right answers, but if you lack awareness of how your words and actions affect others, you'll struggle to lead. People don't follow people who make them feel small. They follow people who make them feel seen. That's a skill. It's learned over time by observing, reflecting, and adjusting, not through theory, but through real, messy human interactions. Another vital skill is adaptability. The world doesn't stay the same, and neither do people. Change is constant. And those who resist change or panic when it arrives fall behind quickly. But those who know how to pivot, how to let go of what no longer works, how to stay curious instead of defensive, they thrive, not just once, but over and over again. Adaptability isn't about giving up your values. It's about adjusting your approach without compromising your core. Then there's resilience. Not just the ability to get through hard things, but the mindset to grow from them. Everyone falls. Everyone faces setbacks, but not everyone gets stronger from them. Resilience isn't built when things are easy. It's built when everything's falling apart and you choose to keep going anyway. And more importantly, when you choose to learn from it. That's what makes the difference between temporary success and lasting impact. The reason most people struggle isn't because they aren't smart enough or driven enough. It's because they were never taught to value skills over status. They pursued recognition without preparation. They learned how to win, but not how to build. They focused on what the world could see, not who they were becoming on the inside. And so they hit a ceiling. Sometimes that ceiling is external, but often it's internal, built by their own lack of readiness. True success, the kind that sustains you, is built slowly, it's built intentionally, it's built by people who are more focused on becoming than appearing, people who invest in skills even when no one is watching, people who ask better questions, who seek feedback, who are willing to look at their blind spots. People who aren't afraid to be bad at something before they're good at it, because they know that a house built on sand might stand for a season, but eventually the storm comes. And when the storm comes, and it always does, skills are what keep you standing. Not your followers, not your title, not your bank account. Skills. How you handle failure, how you rebuild trust, how you regulate your emotions, how you navigate uncertainty. These are the anchors that keep you grounded when the winds of life start to blow. So if you're chasing success, don't just look at where you want to go. Ask yourself, who do I need to become to stay there once I arrive, and then start building those skills, slowly, daily, intentionally, not for applause, not for likes, but because that's what sustainable success requires. Because if you don't have the skills, success will feel like a burden. But if you do, success becomes a platform, not just for what you can achieve, but for what you can help others become. The world is full of people who reached the top and didn't know what to do once they got there. Don't be one of them. Build the skills, live the values, do the work. And when success comes, as it will, you'll be ready to hold it, grow it, and multiply it. Not just for yourself, but for everyone you serve. Because success without skills is an illusion. But success built on skills, that's legacy. Confidence is often misunderstood. People see it as charisma, as boldness, as someone who walks into a room and owns it. We associate confidence with loud voices, quick answers, and unwavering opinions. But real confidence, the kind that lasts, the kind that doesn't crumble when things get hard, looks very different. Real confidence is quiet, it's steady. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, and it's built, not born. It doesn't come from personality, popularity, or position. It comes from the small, consistent practice of foundational skills. Confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing yourself. It's not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to move forward despite it. And that kind of grounded confidence doesn't appear overnight. It's a result of repeated behavior, of deliberate effort, of choosing to show up again and again when it would be easier not to. Foundational skills like self-awareness, discipline, emotional regulation, empathy, communication, and responsibility are what give confidence its roots. Without them, what looks like confidence is often just performance. When you meet someone who is truly confident, you feel it before they speak. It's not in their volume, it's in their presence. They're not trying to impress you. They're not trying to dominate the room. They're just there fully. They listen when others speak. They admit when they don't know something. They're not threatened by disagreement. Why? Because their confidence is built on something real. It's built on competence, on skill, on knowing they've done the work internally and externally to earn their place. Foundational skills create internal proof. Every time you show up to something difficult and give your best, you build trust with yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen that internal voice that says, I can rely on me. And that's where lasting confidence begins. Not in applause from others, but in alignment with yourself. When you know you've done the work, when you know you've practiced the values you preach, you don't need validation to feel strong. You already are. This is why foundational skills matter more than any external validation or title you could ever receive. Take self-awareness, for instance. How can you be confident if you don't know who you are? If your identity is wrapped in what others think, you'll spend your life chasing approval and fearing rejection. But when you're grounded in your values, in your purpose, in what you stand for, you can walk into any room, no matter who's in it, and stay centered, because your confidence isn't based on comparison, it's based on clarity. Discipline is another skill that builds confidence over time. People who show up for themselves consistently, who put in the reps when no one's watching, don't need to fake confidence. They have it. Because they've paid the price. They've stayed late when they were tired. They've chosen growth over comfort. They've said no to shortcuts. And the result isn't just external success. It's a deep, quiet trust in themselves. That kind of confidence can't be shaken. Emotional regulation is also a powerful source of confidence. Life is unpredictable. People will disappoint you. Plans will change. You will fail. And in those moments, the people who can stay grounded, who can feel their emotions without being controlled by them, are the ones who lead with strength. It's not about being stoic or numb. It's about being centered. It's about knowing how to respond instead of just reacting. That's not instinct, it's a learned skill. And it's one of the most powerful contributors to lasting confidence. Then there's empathy. It might not seem like a power skill at first glance, but it's one of the most transformative. Confident people don't need to belittle others to feel important. They don't need to win every argument. They're not threatened by someone else's strength. Why? Because they can see beyond themselves. They can connect with others, understand them, support them. And that connection creates influence. The most confident leaders are the ones who can lift others without losing themselves. Communication is yet another foundational skill that impacts confidence profoundly. When you can articulate your thoughts clearly, When you can express what you feel and what you mean in a way others can understand, you don't just feel heard, you feel empowered. Communication isn't about dominating a conversation. It's about creating clarity. And confident people don't hide behind big words or empty noise. They speak simply, directly, honestly, because they know who they are and what they believe. And finally, responsibility. It's easy to blame others. It's easy to deflect, to justify, to find excuses. But confident people take ownership. They don't pretend to have it all figured out, but they do take control of what they can influence, their choices, their behavior, their response. And that ownership gives them power. Because when you believe you have the ability to influence your life, you no longer fear it. You step into it fully without needing guarantees. All of these skills, these foundational practices, are available to anyone. You don't have to be born with a certain personality. You don't need permission or status. You just have to be willing to practice, to do the work that most people avoid, to stay in the process when it gets boring, hard, or uncomfortable. The payoff is not just external success, it's inner stability. And that's what makes confidence real. You're not faking it. You're not borrowing it from others. You've earned it. In a world obsessed with appearance, there's something incredibly powerful about someone who doesn't need to be seen to feel valuable. Someone who knows their worth before they enter the room. That kind of confidence doesn't scream. It doesn't seek approval. It just is. And it's built day by day through the quiet practice of foundational skills. So if you want to build real confidence, the kind that doesn't crack under pressure, the kind that inspires others, the kind that helps you lead, connect, and grow, start there. Start with the basics. Start with the way you speak to yourself, the way you treat others, the way you handle difficulty, the way you show up when it matters. You don't need to impress anyone. You need to become someone you're proud of. Because confidence isn't something you perform. It's something you practice. And the people who seem the most secure, the ones you look up to, not only worked for it, they live every day through discipline, through humility, through the quiet choice to grow. Foundational skills may not be glamorous, they may not trend online, but they're the bedrock of every person who walks through life with clarity, purpose, and strength. Build those, and confidence won't be something you chase, it will be something you carry. We live in a world that celebrates the finish line but forgets the practice. We admire those who've made it, the ones who seem to have all the answers, the titles, the recognition. But what we don't see, what we often ignore, is what got them there. Not luck, not shortcuts, not some overnight transformation. What gets people to real success, real leadership, real strength is a daily practice. The kind that doesn't get attention, the kind that doesn't show up on social media, the kind that is done quietly with consistency and intention when nobody's clapping. When we talk about skills, foundational, human, life-changing skills, what we're really talking about is a practice. Not a one-time achievement, not a lesson learned and checked off, not a weekend workshop followed by a certificate, a practice. Something you do over and over again, not because it's glamorous, but because it's necessary, because these skills are like muscles. They atrophy when you stop using them. They only grow through repetition. And growth happens not in the knowing, but in the doing. Most people want the result without the repetition. They want to be great communicators, but don't practice listening every day. They want to be confident, but don't do the small things that build self-trust. They want to be emotionally intelligent, but they don't take time to reflect, to apologize, to stay calm when it's hard. They want to lead, but skip the daily effort of understanding others, taking responsibility, and serving with humility. And the truth is, you can't hack this stuff. You can't skip steps. If you want the outcomes, you have to commit to the process every single day. Learning these skills is not about mastering a technique. It's about changing your behavior. It's about making small choices again and again that align with who you want to be. And some days that will feel easy. Most days it won't. But that's the point. Growth is never supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to stretch you. It's supposed to challenge your default responses. It's supposed to interrupt the habits that keep you stuck. Take empathy, for example. It's not something you get once and move on. It's something you practice every time you want to speak but instead choose to listen. Every time you want to judge but instead try to understand. Every time you want to defend yourself but instead validate someone else's experience. That's not a switch you flip. That's a daily decision. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Not because it's easy, but because you've made it part of who you are. Discipline works the same way. People think discipline is about willpower, about pushing through with brute force. But real discipline is a rhythm, a routine, a system of decisions aligned with your values, repeated over and over until they become second nature. Waking up early once doesn't make you disciplined. Saying no to a distraction one time doesn't define your focus. It's what you do consistently. Especially on the days you don't feel like it, that defines your discipline. And just like any other skill, it must be practiced daily or it slowly fades. Even communication, something so essential to leadership and connection, isn't something you figure out once. It's something you refine every time you speak with intention, every time you clarify instead of assume, every time you choose honesty over comfort or silence over speaking just to fill space. Great communicators aren't born. They're built through repeated effort, through a lifetime of practice. And the people who are best at it aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who understand the weight of their words and use them wisely. It's easy to think of personal growth like a ladder. Step 1, then step 2, then step 3, but it's more like a circle. You keep coming back to the same lessons, the same skills, the same challenges. But each time, you meet them with more wisdom, more strength, more maturity. You practice them again, not because you fail, but because that's how real growth works. It's not about finishing, it's about deepening. And that only happens through daily effort. What separates those who grow from those who stay stuck isn't talent or intelligence, it's commitment. It's the willingness to do the work when it's no longer exciting, when it's no longer new. When no one is watching or rewarding you, that's where most people quit. Not because they don't care, because they expected it to be faster, easier, more glamorous. But mastery is quiet. It's slow. It's boring at times, but it's also powerful, because when you stick with the practice, you earn your transformation, not in giant leaps, but in small, deliberate steps repeated over time. There's a reason the word practice is used in professions like law and medicine, because no matter how skilled you are, you never arrive. You're always practicing, always refining, always learning. That same mindset applies to the foundational skills that make us better human beings. You practice courage by speaking the truth even when your voice shakes. You practice humility by asking for help when your ego wants to pretend you're fine. You practice integrity by keeping your word when it's inconvenient. And none of this happens by accident. It happens on purpose. This is the beauty and the burden of personal development. No one can do it for you. You can have mentors. You can read books, you can attend trainings, but in the end, it's the choices you make day in and day out that determine who you become. It's the decision to stay committed to the practice, even when it's hard, even when you stumble, even when progress feels invisible. Because that's how change actually happens, slowly, quietly, daily. And it's also the reason why some people become trusted leaders, great parents, inspiring teammates. Not because they're perfect, but because they've done the work, they've practiced the skills that make them trustworthy, empathetic, consistent, and strong. They've shown up again and again to the uncomfortable places. And over time, they've become someone others can rely on. Someone who doesn't just know what matters, they live it. So the next time you feel like you're not getting anywhere, that you're stuck in the same struggles, that your growth is too slow, remember this: every time you choose the practice over the shortcut, you're building something that lasts. Every time you show up when it's hard, you're reinforcing who you are. And that is never wasted. Because learning these skills isn't about arriving. It's not about what you know. It's about how you live. And how you live is built slowly, steadily, by what you practice every single day. Pressure is inevitable. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you do, or what you've achieved, life will apply pressure. It shows up as deadlines, as responsibilities, as expectations, as unexpected problems, as moments where everything feels uncertain. And in those moments, we all have a choice. We can let pressure break us, or we can allow it to shape us. What determines that outcome isn't our environment. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's the skills we bring into those moments. The right skills can transform pressure into purpose. Pressure isn't the enemy. In fact, pressure often reveals what's real. It peels back the layers and shows us what's underneath. It doesn't create weakness, it exposes it. And it doesn't create strength either, but it invites it. Pressure is an invitation to grow, to lead, to show up differently. But only if we've built the internal capacity to meet it. That's what skills are. They're not just tools we use, they're anchors we hold on to when the storm hits. The world often tells us that we should avoid pressure, escape discomfort, dodge failure. But growth doesn't happen in the absence of tension. Growth happens when we step into it, when we choose to be intentional in the face of difficulty. But here's the truth: you can't simply will yourself through pressure. You need to be prepared, and preparation doesn't mean knowing exactly what's going to happen. It means building the strength, awareness, and discipline to navigate whatever does. It's easy to look calm when everything is going your way. It's easy to seem confident when there's no challenge. But when the pressure mounts, when something goes wrong, when the plan falls apart, when you're overwhelmed, that's when your true character shows up. And that character is built from skills. Not the kind you learn in theory, but the kind you practice daily: emotional control, self-awareness, communication, empathy, focus, and adaptability. Those are the skills that allow you to take pressure and turn it into something meaningful. Take emotional control. When pressure builds, emotions run high: fear, frustration, doubt, anger. Most people react without thinking. They get consumed by the emotion and act in ways they later regret. But those who have trained themselves to pause, to breathe, to notice what they're feeling without becoming what they're feeling, those people can make decisions from a place of clarity instead of chaos. That's not instinct. That's a learned skill. And in moments of pressure, it becomes a superpower. Self-awareness is just as critical. If you don't understand what triggers you, if you don't recognize how you show up under stress, you'll fall into the same patterns over and over again. You'll say things you don't mean. You'll blame others. You'll retreat or explode. But when you've developed self-awareness, pressure doesn't control you. You work with it. You recognize your signals. You take responsibility. You shift before spiraling. You lead yourself before you lead others. And that changes everything. Then there's communication. Under pressure, most people either shut down or lash out. But the skill of clear, calm communication, especially when stakes are high, is what creates alignment, connection, and trust. When pressure rises, people don't just need solutions. They need clarity. They need to know what's going on, what matters, what to focus on. That clarity doesn't come from more talking. It comes from intentional, thoughtful speaking, from listening first, from being honest, even when it's hard. That's a skill, and it's forged in practice. Empathy is another. When pressure hits, it's easy to become self-centered, to get tunnel vision, to forget that everyone around you is also under strain. But the people who've developed empathy know how to zoom out. They know how to feel what others are feeling, not to fix it or carry it, but to acknowledge it. That acknowledgement builds trust. It diffuses tension, it creates space for collaboration, even in high-pressure situations. Because pressure doesn't just test your resilience, it tests your humanity. Focus might be one of the most underrated skills under pressure. When everything feels urgent, it's easy to get distracted, overwhelmed, reactive. But those who've trained themselves to prioritize, to stay present, to do the next right thing, they become anchors in the chaos. They don't chase every fire. They don't try to control everything. They stay grounded. Focus is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most, especially when time and energy are limited. And the only way to build that focus is to practice it every day, even when the pressure is low. Adaptability brings it all together. Pressure often comes from change, unexpected events, shifting dynamics, uncertain outcomes. And the people who resist change suffer the most. They cling to what used to work, even when it no longer does. But those who've practiced adaptability know how to let go. Not their values, not their standards, but their attachment to specific plans. They adjust with intention. They stay open, curious, flexible. And in doing so, they move forward instead of getting stuck. All of these skills, emotional control, self-awareness, communication, empathy, focus, adaptability, don't eliminate pressure. They transform your relationship with it. Instead of something to run from, pressure becomes something to lean into. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's meaningful. Because on the other side of pressure is growth, impact, clarity, and purpose. Purpose is not a light you find in the dark. It's something you build moment by moment in how you respond to what life throws at you. Pressure clarifies what matters. It strips away the noise. It forces you to ask hard questions. What do I stand for? Who do I want to be in this moment? What story do I want to tell when this is over? And if you've done the work, if you've built the skills, you'll be able to answer those questions not with panic, but with purpose. This is why preparation matters more than performance. Anyone can perform when conditions are ideal. But those who've prepared by practicing the right skills day in and day out can lead, serve, and thrive when it matters most. They don't need everything to go right in order to move forward. They don't fear the pressure. They've been preparing for it all along. If you want to be the kind of person who turns pressure into purpose, don't wait until the pressure hits. Build the skills now. Practice emotional control during small frustrations. Cultivate self-awareness in quiet moments. Communicate clearly when there's no urgency. Listen deeply even when you disagree. Adapt when the stakes are low so you can thrive when the stakes are high. Because by the time pressure arrives, it's too late to prepare. You either have the capacity or you don't. And the good news is this capacity isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. You build it through effort, intention, and repetition. You build it by showing up to the ordinary moments with extraordinary consistency. And over time, what used to feel overwhelming becomes manageable. What used to break you becomes a stepping stone. And what used to be pressure becomes purpose. Because when you build the right skills, life doesn't get easier, but you get stronger. And that strength gives you the clarity, stability, and courage to turn even the hardest moments into something meaningful, into something that matters, into something you were made for.